Okay, one of our last looks at the calendar. We have 2 classes left on new stuff. Today we talk about perspective drawing, and next class we talk about symmetry and tiling. So 2 days on math and art. That's the end of the new material for the test. Our review day is 1 week from today. Is that true? Yeah, Thursday. Next week is the last Tuesday, Thursday meeting of all Tuesday, Thursday classes. And then our test is Tuesday, May 15, a little bit earlier than normal. So note the time is at 10:30 instead of 11. Officially, the project was due today. Officially, I also said I'll take it anytime from here through the end of the semester. But again, if you want a chance to do revisions, you need to give that project to me by Tuesday coming up. And then I will hand it back to you on Thursday next week. And then you'll have a few days before the day of the exam. Any questions on any of that? 15th is a Tuesday. So next week is a full week, and then that'll be the end of it for us. And then the following Tuesday is our test. Other questions on the calendar? Okay. So here we are on page 25. And let's come up here to number 1 in the middle of page 25. Wadada? Okay, so I've put a few rulers out. I don't have enough for everybody, so kind of share them or just grab a straight edge off of your calculator. Somebody could use the folder that's on the table. So what I'd like for you guys to do is draw some lines that look like they should be parallel. So for example, those 2 lines right there, but extend them, off to the right. And then take these 2 lines right here and extend them off to the left. And just draw them out that way. Maybe you can extend that one over to the left, and you can extend that one to the right. So extend those 3 lines. Red one's going to the right, purple one's going to the left. Be as accurate as possible. Okay, so let's talk about these lines on the box. In theory, I believe that the box has parallel edges, right? Edges that if they continued forever would never meet. But as you draw these lines, does it look like they would never meet if you continued them forever? Like the way that you guys are drawing them, I'm hoping that you see that if you kept drawing, eventually these lines would meet, which goes counter to what we know about the box. That is that these are parallel lines that should go forever and never meet. But the way that it looks, the way that our eye perceives it, these parallel lines actually would end up meeting someplace off in the distance. And so if we look here, maybe it's easier to see on my picture up here on the left-hand lines. I've extended 3 lines going to the left. In theory, those 3 lines on the box are all parallel to each other. Like I know that that's true for the box. But the way that my mind perceives it, if I extend these lines forever, I can see pretty clearly and not too far off of the screen, those lines are going to meet. In fact, all 3 of them are going to meet at a single point, someplace out here right around the clock. And that's strange because in reality, the lines, like if you actually had the box in front of you and you took some string and you extended it forever, the string would stay parallel. The box is truly parallel. But the way that our mind perceives it, these parallel lines seem to be approaching some point, which is strange. The same kind of thing happens on the right-hand side. Maybe the bottom 2 lines you can see are definitely angling towards each other. Maybe someplace here on the whiteboard they would meet. Maybe it would not be until the next room, like on the other side of this wall. But eventually those 3 lines would all meet at some point way out there too. And so what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how to draw things in perspective, how to make things look real. I mean, that box looks real. I think it's a photograph. But we get this strange idea that parallel lines don't actually look parallel when you sit down and draw them. That said, what if I were to draw these lines, the up-down lines on the box? So are these lines parallel on the box? Oops. Are these lines parallel in reality? Yes. If I draw them, do you think they will be parallel? They look pretty parallel to me. Right? I mean, these ones they don't look like they're... Yeah, possibly. The box might be warped a little bit. But I think that these ones, I mean, like they're straight up and down and in reality, and I think if we draw these lines, they will be straight up and down. So I'm not saying that every parallel lines, like all parallel lines, come towards each other, but the ones that seem to be receding off into the distance, those are the ones that actually look like they kind of collapse to a point. So we'll talk about that today. First, a couple of words. Number two, Becca. Can you read the definitions for us? Parallel lines are lines that are perpendicular lines. Okay, thank you. Maggie? And this is a weakness, right? You're trying to draw a 3D object, but you only have 2 dimensions that you're drawing on. A piece of paper is a 2-dimensional thing. So let's talk about how we can get that sense of realism. Number 4, we'll go to Henry. Okay, so here's a painting. You don't have this in the notes. I just didn't want to spend all the toner on this painting, but here's the painting. And it's from about 800 years ago, about 1200 AD. And, you know, it's supposed to depict some scene, which is supposed to be a 3-dimensional scene, right? What do you think? Does it do a good job of conveying 3D realism or, okay, so we've got a not really, we've got a yes. What kinds of tools did this artist use to try to give a sense of 3D on the 2D piece of paper or canvas? Go ahead. Foreground and background. So what are you talking about? All right, so what do you see that's closer and what's farther away? Okay, so we've got people close, and we've got trees kind of far away, foreground, background. I think the way they depicted that was smaller, larger. People that are supposed to be farther away are smaller. Okay. Okay, so they drew kind of small people off in the background, or small trees off in the background, and big people in the foreground. Okay, other thoughts? Other tools that this person used? Okay, so maybe there's some fading happening off in the background, and maybe things are more vibrant or brighter or more colored in the foreground. Other thoughts? So which buildings are you talking about, Justin? Yeah. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so where is that tower supposed to be? I mean, that's supposed to be in the background, right? And then this big white structure here is supposed to be in the foreground. And so there's a shading kind of thing happening. So we used a little bit of a different color, a really bright thing in the front and kind of a darker thing in the back. I don't know, that doesn't look very far in the back to me. It just kind of looks to the side and colored differently. Then we've got the giant people circled here in red, and then I don't know, some people who are like 3.5 feet tall over there on the left. I mean, there are some weaknesses with this. They didn't have the tools back then to draw things that were supposed to look good, that looked 3-dimensional. All they had was this kind of layering idea, the make things big and put them in the front, make things small and we'll call them in the back, and a little bit of shading stuff. But they didn't have this sense of how to draw things in perspective. And in fact, a lot of artists, you know, like before the Middle Ages, were quite frustrated. They had these images in their mind, these beautiful pictures they wanted to share with the world, just didn't have the ability to do it because they didn't have the tools to do it. So let's come back here. Then we'll go to the next page. And I think we're up to Holly for number 5. Al-Hatham, maybe? Okay, thank you. Zach? All right, Emma? And that's kind of what I was getting at with this picture on the previous page. So let's go back here with the box. I've got this grid, and I know the grid is really light on your photocopy, but I've got this grid, and your mind sees everything on this two-dimensional grid, and your mind perceives things not by like where they really are in three-dimensional reality, but like where do they appear to hit this grid, right? I'm looking at this box, it's off in the distance, and my eye looks at all these different points on the grid, and I try to get information about where the box is 3D wise, but ultimately it comes down to what does that box do on this grid? What does it look like to me? And that's where we saw this idea of the parallel lines seeming to go to some point. All right, so if you look down a really long hallway, what does it look like to you? I know that the walls are parallel to each other on either side of the hallway. What does it look like if I look really far down this hallway? Looks like it gets narrower. You've seen that with train tracks too. You ever like stand on a set of train tracks? I know that the train tracks are parallel forever, otherwise the train is going to have big trouble. But if you look at that train track 100 yards away, 200 yards away, what does it look like? Looks like it's getting smaller and smaller. And in fact, if it's straight enough and long enough, it looks like it just disappears to a point. But if I keep walking, then that point all of a sudden opens up and looks like it is, and that's with these parallel tracks. Take a look at this picture right here. We've got a road fading off in the distance, some poorly drawn mountains back there, and a telephone pole. How does this thing compare in terms of 3D realism to our very meticulously drawn painting from 1200? Which one looks more 3D? I feel this one, this simple black and white drawing, looks more three-dimensional, more realistic than this. And I feel very badly saying that because this took many, many hours. Blood, sweat, and tears went into this thing. But this person who did this didn't have the tools to draw something that looks 3D. That road looks like it goes and vanishes off into the background, what it looks like. And so, so let's go to this note here. Who's our reader now? Sam? Okay, and so you can actually literally see the vanishing point way out there, right around where the mountains are at the horizon. And so we've got these three lines that I know are parallel, if that's a road. But again, if you look at these things fading into the distance, the parallel lines seem to converge to a point called the vanishing point. Let's see, so we will go down to, let's go down to number 7, Blake. 7. Go ahead. Okay, so in this picture right here with the mountains, I've got a drawing in 1-point perspective because I've got these 3 lines all going to a single point, 1 point. And that point is called the vanishing point. Can you guys, again, with your straight edge or with the folder or whatever, can you draw, from that point, maybe 2 other lines just off here, someplace off to the side? And by drawing those 2 other lines, hitting that same point way off in the distance, maybe put a dotted line in the middle, and we've got a second road converging to the place that the first road converges to. How many vanishing points do we have in this picture? Still 1. It is still in 1-point perspective. If instead you decided to draw some lines to a different point, for example, if you pick a point here and maybe draw a couple of lines to that one, again with your straight edge, just any old point out there, and maybe put a dotted one in the middle. And now we've got a different road, maybe parallel to the first one, doesn't have to be. How many vanishing points for this one? 2. This drawing is said to be in 2-point perspective, 2 vanishing points. Okay, so we'll come down to number 8 for Jocelyn. Okay, so just find some lines that you think are parallel, like in reality, and that fade off into the distance. And use your straight edge and just start connecting the dots. So find some things that look like they are straight lines going off into the distance. See if they all happen to meet at a point. Okay, so we're going to draw a few lines up here, and we're not going to draw them all. You might have found some more, but the idea is that, again, lines that appear to be parallel probably are fading off into the distance. So we'll draw some blue things. So one thing you could do is, for example, maybe that line right there on the sidewalk, and I'll draw the other one from the sidewalk. I'm going to try not to cheat. I'm just like literally going to try to draw lines, and then we'll go the other sidewalk out here. Maybe something like that. And then another sidewalk up here. Anybody find any other lines that look like they're heading off into the background? Okay, so we got the tops of the buildings. So maybe you could draw, like, for example, all the way at the top. And again, I'm trying not to cheat and look at the answer. Yeah, just trying to barely touch the tops of the buildings, and maybe even like this facade line here, you know, like that. That looks like it's going into the background, and there's a couple of other facade lines you could draw. Any other lines people found on the trees? So what are we looking at? Like, oh, the bases of the trees. Wonderful. Okay, so it sure looks like those trees were probably planted to be parallel to each other. So I'm going to try. Let's see, how can I do this? I think I didn't draw that very well. Let's try going on this side of the trees. All right, does that look about okay? Okay. And so what happens with all these parallel lines? You see that they meet at a point. They're not parallel at all if you look at them in this 2-dimensional canvas. I know that they're all parallel to the board. They all run away from the board. They all go behind this board in reality. But the way that our mind perceives them, they all meet at a point. That's called the vanishing point. It happens to be right there around the trees, a little to the left of the trees. Okay. Jocelyn, you had your hand raised a little bit ago? Okay. All right, next page. Do you guys know M.C. Escher? Anybody heard of that artist? Okay, here's an Escher work right there. See if you guys can, again, use your straight edges. Find some lines that look like they're parallel and connect. See if you can't find that vanishing point. Yes. Okay, so this one is again drawn in 1-point perspective. We've got tons of parallel things. I have only drawn a few of them. You guys have drawn different ones, but we all end up finding the same vanishing point. In this case, the vanishing point is somewhere maybe a little bit above and to the left of that bird-like thing. That's the vanishing point. So when Escher sat down to draw one of these things, he said, okay, first I got to find my vanishing point, and then I'm going to make all these columns and pillars, but I better make it so that they head towards that vanishing point. That's how we get this idea of 3D realism on a 2D canvas. Okay, for this one, The box we first looked at was, yes, was in 2-point perspective. Okay, let's go down to C. Who's our reader now? Is it Justin? You guys know what I'm talking about? All right, so I will close the box. I'll save that. And this is something that I'm assuming most of us have seen. This is the Star Wars intro text fading into the background. Is the movie screen a three-dimensional object? No, it's 2D. Is the text really fading into the background? No, text is going up. There's only up and down, it's going up. But what do they do to try to convince you that it's fading into the background? Well, they make it approach a vanishing point. Can you guys see it? I mean, like if you draw here-ish, does that look like it's about parallel to the side? And then over here, something like that-ish. And you can see the vanishing point is not too far above the top of that screen. There's no behind. It's not behind the screen, it's above the screen. And how do they make it look like it's going back into the distance? Is by drawing the text so that it kind of converges in here on the sides to a vanishing point. Okay, now it is a little bit more involved than that. What can you guys tell me about the text here, like the word to the in the foreground and the word episode way there in the background? Like the text is a lot smaller. Okay, so it's not just a matter of angling it in on the margins. You know, they also kind of trick you a little bit by making the objects smaller in the background, and it works. It's pretty convincing. What do you mean the spaces are different? So definitely, yeah, so we'll make the text smaller and we'll make the spaces in between the words smaller. So there's some other tricks going on here to try to deceive your mind into thinking this is really going off into the background. But ultimately, it's about a vanishing point, and it's pretty clear where the vanishing point is for that. Okay, we'll go to Doug for 9. Okay, so let's go to Ashley for 10. Okay, so again, with your rulers and other straight edges, you're going to try to draw things here that look parallel. You're going to find not just one vanishing point, but this one actually has 2. So go ahead and draw lots of parallel things. See if you can find the 2 vanishing points. Okay, how many vanishing points did we find for this one? Hopefully we found 2. So I'll use my straight edge tool up here and see if we can't find them. So I'll connect some stuff going off to the left. How does that look there? Is that all right? Okay, and then we'll draw, say, this one here, and maybe around there. And if I keep drawing these guys, now it's not going to be perfect because I'm just kind of eyeballing it here, but you can see that it looks like those points are, looks like those 3 lines are just about meeting in one spot. I'll try drawing one more going here, maybe around there. And you can see there's kind of this like little ball where all the lines tend to meet. If I did it perfect, they would all meet at exactly a point. So that is the left vanishing point, but then there's a perfectly good right vanishing point. So if we connect stuff over here, we'll find a completely different point. And so this guy would then be drawn in 2-point perspective. Okay, I'm not going to draw the last one because I can't quite see where the parallel thing is, but you can see roughly somewhere around here is where those 3 lines meet. And so we've got 2 different vanishing points, a vanishing point to the left and a vanishing point to the right. Yeah, so if we keep going up here, and then you're saying up on the other ones too? Yeah. Yeah, so like it will eventually, you can see kind of tend towards that, like a point way, way, way up there. Generally for us, what we're talking about is lines that appear to be perpendicular to the canvas. So really we're looking for the lines that are like going into the page. It doesn't work as well, but I think you're right for the straight up and down ones. Okay, let's focus on the 2 vanishing points here. So again, we're talking about one of them. I'll just put a circle. So one vanishing point, maybe somewhere in there, another vanishing point somewhere in there. Are those vanishing points completely independent, or is there some nice relationship between the point on the right and the point on the left? So we're going to draw a line between them. I like that idea. So I'm going to draw a line just going all the way left and right. And I'll just try to estimate maybe something like there-ish. Maybe around there. Okay. So I've got my two vanishing points, and I'm connecting them, roughly. What kind of a line did I just draw? A horizon line. And in fact, what other word has horizon in it that describes this line? Is horizontal. It is no coincidence that that line is horizontal. That line is not going to look like this. You are not going to connect two vanishing points and have them off at a diagonal. If there were a picture where two vanishing points were on this diagonal, that picture would look very strange. That picture would not look legitimate. It wouldn't look realistic to us. It would look like it was in like a Dr. Seuss book or something. Like, I think it would still do this. I do. So not a coincidence that the horizon line is horizontal, okay? So this is an important fact. If you have more than one vanishing point, they all live on a horizontal line. And that's why we call it the horizon. And in fact, when we were back here on the simple drawing, well, what do we say about those mountains down in the back there? What do we call that? That's the horizon, right? I mean, like the stuff all the way at the edge of your vision. That's the horizon as far as you can see. It is a horizontal line where everything vanishes. Okay, can you guys do the same kind of thing on part B? So you're going to draw all kinds of parallel things. There's some in the floor. There's others in the ceiling. Draw as many as you can and see how many vanishing points show up. How many vanishing points did we find? All right, so I found one someplace over here on the right-hand side of the picture, like inside of that blue wall, somewhere in there. And so I felt like some of these lines in the tiles on the ground were headed towards that point, somewhere in the blue wall. And then I did the other ones in the ground, going the other direction. And so I feel like someplace off here to the left, off picture, is another vanishing point. And again, if I did this perfectly, then the vanishing point that I found over here and the vanishing point that I found someplace out here, what should be true about them? They should be on the same horizontal line. Okay, it looks like for me my vanishing point on the left is a little bit lower than it should be, or maybe the one on the right is too high. It's not perfect, but in reality it is. I mean, if I were able to draw these things more accurately, we would get those two red points on a horizontal line. They're close enough. Did anybody draw stuff in the ceiling? Yeah. And what did we find? Is there another vanishing point? Yeah, all right, so let's go in here and we'll draw green. All right, so I'm going to go along the lights because I think those are easy to identify. So I'm going to draw that along the lights there and maybe along the lights here. Draw that one, and what do we find? What do we see about those lines in the ceiling? They're going to the same point, right? And so sometimes it's hard to know just looking at a picture where the vanishing point is. It's not always in some place that looks important. I don't think there's anything important about that blue wall there. But anyway, that's where one of the vanishing points is. Okay, 11. Who's our reader now? Zach? Okay, so we're going to go through a process here. If you miss any of the steps in this process, check out the video. We're recording it. It'll be on YouTube this afternoon. Before we start the process, raise your hand if you do not have a pencil with you today. Is there? Oh, we've got a few people. Is there anybody who can lend these folks a pencil? We could kind of distribute extra pencils around. You want to use a pencil for this part. Anybody else need? Johannes has one. Can we send Johannes? Can you give that to Henry? Johannes? Okay. Does everybody have a pencil? Looks like we have lots of pencil donors. Thank you. Okay. Again, You're going to want to use a straight edge as much as possible. So the first thing we're going to do is draw our horizon line. So go ahead and draw a line just someplace up there towards the top. Make it as close to horizontal as you can. This is the first thing that artists do when they're trying to convey 3D realism. They don't just start drawing buildings and houses and pillars and things like that. They find their horizon line. You can put it anywhere, but you got to start there. Then we're going to pick 2 points. This is going to be a drawing in 2-point perspective. You can pick them anywhere. I'm going to pick one over there and another one over here. They can be closer together or further apart. Just pick any 2 points. And I'm going to abbreviate. That one is going to be VPL for vanishing point left, and VPR for vanishing point right. Okay, everybody with me so far? All right, next thing we're going to do, we're going to draw the front corner edge of our building. I'll just kind of show you what it is before we draw it. I am imagining that line right there. That's the first thing I'm going to draw right now. So anywhere in the middle of your picture, you are going to draw a straight up and down line, and it's going to represent that edge. Again, use a straight edge if possible. Doesn't have to be right in the middle. I'll put mine right there. Just any little vertical line. Okay, that little vertical line has a top point and a bottom point, 2 endpoints. What you're going to do again with your straight edge is you're going to connect those 2 points that are in black on my drawing with each of the vanishing points. So you're about to draw 4 lines. Connect each of those points to each of the vanishing points. 4 lines with a straight edge. So we should have 4 new lines drawn in. What's that? Oh, yeah. A whole song. And like the little snippets. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to end our building on both sides. Right now, this building, in theory, goes off forever into the distance. So I'm just going to, again, arbitrarily end the building. I'll end it over here with some vertical line, any place you want. I'll end my other one over here with a different vertical line. Doesn't have to be the same distance from the first one. Just any 2 vertical lines anywhere in there. Okay, and now because we've cut our building off, you want to erase the stuff that is now past your building. So I can't erase these things. I'm going to have to delete them entirely. But all of this stuff now is beyond the end of your building. So erase that part. And all of this stuff out here is past the building. Erase it. Doesn't exist anymore. This is why we use pencil. Okay, so you guys have straight edges, so hopefully your building looks even better than mine does. Although I'd find that hard to believe because my building is so sweet right now. Okay, now we got to find the roof. The rest of this is determined. You guys made some choices about like where to draw those vertical lines. We have no more choices anymore. We just got to complete the building. It exists. We just have to find it. So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this top point. We're finding points on the roof. So there's a red one on the roof. And for me, I'll put a blue one on the other part of the roof. So I've got 2 roof points. What we're going to do is connect those roof points to the opposite vanishing point. I'll start with the blue one. For me, this blue point is my left one. I'm going to connect it to the right vanishing point. So you're drawing a straight line, connecting the left roof point to the right vanishing point. I'll draw it here like that. Okay, so it's your left roof point to the right vanishing point. And then we have one more line to draw in. That's the right roof point to the left vanishing point. So go ahead and draw that line in so I have these crisscrossing lines. And where they intersect is the end of the building. So put a dot there. Where these 2 guys intersect. And everything that's past that point doesn't exist. Erase it. Hide the evidence. Okay, and that right there is a building drawn in correct 2-point perspective. How do yours look? Inviting? Okay, so we've got our box, our building. It's done. Right now there's no way to get to it, so let's see if we can't get a road going. So what you're going to do is draw a road. Let's go ahead and draw a line, say right in front of this building, connecting to the vanishing point. So start at the vanishing point, bring it near the building, maybe another one near the building. Let's make it an accessible building. So start with the vanishing point. Everything has to come from the vanishing point. No road steers. Maybe it's a dirt road. All right, and if you want your building to really be in a high traffic area, you can give it another road. Maybe head over to the other vanishing point. Again, always starting from the vanishing point. I gotta say, that's pretty good. That's like historically good. That's how good my drawing is. You guys can say, I was there when Ian drew that building. Okay, any questions on drawing a building and stuff in 2-point perspective? Okay. Again, thinking about that last test, let me give you something to ponder. Suppose that I gave you just a picture of the building. No roads, no horizontal line, no vanishing points. I just drew the building for you. And I said, is this in correct perspective? How would you tell? Like what if I drew a building? I said, okay, here's my building. Here's my building. Is it in correct perspective? How could you tell? You need to see if there's vanishing points. That's what you need to do, right? So how do you tell if there's vanishing points? Well, let's see. When we had our building, we were able to kind of extend the roof and get over to that vanishing point. If you extend here, that's not very good. If you extend here, and you extend here, and you extend here, does it look like they are approaching a point off in the distance? No, I have not drawn something in correct perspective. Okay? You can just draw the lines out and see if they meet. They're supposed to meet out there. If they don't, it's not drawn right. This is not what buildings look like. I mean, I can draw it and say, oh, it's a cube, but that's not how it would look to our eyes. Suppose that they actually did meet. So suppose that it actually looked like they all kind of met at some point up here. I have to pretend because they don't. And then suppose that over here, I'm going to draw some other lines. I'll draw, let's see, maybe these lines here. I'll curve that line to make it pretend like it meets. Suppose that the other vanishing point is over there. So that's your vanishing point left, and over here is our vanishing point right. So suppose that I give you a picture, and you actually do find two vanishing points. And there they are. Is this drawn in correct perspective? It has two vanishing points. That's good. But there's something bad about this picture. If you connect those vanishing points, what's supposed to happen? It's supposed to be on the same horizontal, right? If you find two vanishing points, but they're not on a horizontal, it wasn't drawn right, right? So there's really, I suppose, rotate the page.
You're saying that
if it's diagonal, it's not the right perspective, right? So to be drawn in correct perspective, there's two things that we did. We had vanishing points, but what's the first thing we drew in our picture? Is that horizontal line. If we drew a diagonal line, you could go through the whole process and you would get a building that looks very funny. So it's two things to verify that something's in correct perspective. Vanishing points, and they happen to be on a perfectly horizontal line, or at least close enough that you could say, oh yeah, I think that's right. Wadada.
I think like it doesn't necessarily have to be, it has to be like the same way the ones that are actually.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's kind of what Johannes is saying. What if the whole picture is askew?
Yeah, but this in this case.
Right, so you're saying they should be, so let's go back. Let's see if we have a nice, so do we have a nice one? Like, is this building, does that clarify what you're saying, or does that not apply to this picture? I see. Okay, so I will be clear. I'm not trying to trick anybody on my test. I'm looking for two things, vanishing points and on a horizontal. That's what I'm after. Okay, so there are a couple of, let's go back here, a couple of web pages that I put links to here. And so I'll encourage you to check them out later, but we'll just spend a few minutes now looking at them together. So I pulled up some stuff. First one I want to go to is here. This is the first link in your page. What does that look like? The drawing that we just did. And so the nice thing is, and you can see all the lines that we drew, except they didn't erase, they just made the ones lighter that are off in the background. And the nice thing is that all the red points are points that you can move. So you can grab this point and make a taller building or a shorter building. Or you can make it kind of like really long in one direction. Okay, that looks all right. What else can I drag? I could drag the vanishing points. Okay, so change the vanishing point and the picture changes as well. So this is kind of nice because you can sort of play around and make all kinds of different buildings here. So check this out later if you want to. Okay, next picture is a whole collection of photographs of some sort of strange artsy type things that some people have done. So if you look at this, this is two pictures of the same space. If you look at what they've done on the left-hand side, you can see that they painted, you know, like the ceiling has got this little curvy thing on it, then there's a pillar and then a wall and there's a circle on something else. And it just looks like a royal wreck, right? I mean, like it looks terrible. You wouldn't pay for this paint job because it's just splashed all over the room randomly, except it's not random. Because if you're standing in the right spot, which is where the photographer was for the picture on the right-hand side, then all of this like disjointed junk comes together and you get a different perspective. And I don't know, I mean, that, like if you were standing there, I'm just looking at a photograph, but it almost looks like that yellow stuff is sort of floating in space somewhere in this room. And so I don't know, like it was designed in just such a way that like it would line up and just kind of look like it's floating there. And so there's a whole collection of these things. I wouldn't want to live in this space. But... Julian Beever, is that his name? We're going to pull up some pictures. You tell me if that's what you're talking about. Let's keep going a tiny bit with this. All right, so there's same kind of idea. If you stand almost anywhere, it looks like gobbledygook on the left. If you stand in just the right spot, there's this floating red circular thing. I don't even know how this person did it here. Like how is that? Like where is that? Right. Exit. Like that piece right there, is that not an open door? So I guess it's in here somewhere, like that piece. Okay, so let's. That's what it looks like to me. So I'm not sure what's going on that one. All right, so there's some funny business happening, you think? All right, let's scroll down here, going around the hallway. Mess, 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 and then this like floating white ellipse thing in the middle of nowhere. That's one of my favorites right there. Like you stand in just the right spot, looks like this kind of crisscrossing like blue tape going right through the middle of the room. Can you guys tell me what is, let's see, this and this? Where is that on the right-hand picture? So which one is it? I'll number these guys. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 lines when you stand in the right spot. Which one? It's number 5. That's what it is. This thing that looks perfectly horizontal, sorry, perfectly vertical. Number 5 is actually going off into the background, and it's crooked and it comes straight. Part of it is on the floor. Look at this part right here. It's on the floor. It looks like it's straight up and down on the wall, but that's actually this piece right here on the floor. Is that little guy right there. And then you can see here this piece and this piece. What number is that? That's number 4. That's the true diagonal one going across, and then I guess that's the other diagonal one going over the window and the door and the side. That's number 3 going this way. Okay, and then if we scroll down, there's some more stuff, floating orange rectangular things if you're in the right spot. Looks like a mess if you're in the wrong spot. This one on the right kind of seems to like shimmer in my mind. I can't quite grasp that one. And the last one, I don't care for that one at all. Like if you're standing in the right spot, it looks like the glass has like color shading around it. Yeah, it feels like you could just do that on the glass. That doesn't seem as impressive. Okay, so a couple of people in this room have mentioned this guy who does sidewalk art. I don't know that he's the only one, but I feel like he's the most famous one. So there he is. His name is Julian Beever, and here is a large Coke bottle. Where does that large Coke bottle exist? On the sidewalk. That is drawn using chalk on the sidewalk. It is not 3D. It is not coming out of the sidewalk. It is drawn on the sidewalk. And in fact, you can even see down below here some of the quote shadow, like the sun coming through the Coke and being kind of orangish on the ground. That is chalk. Everything here is chalk. The white, I mean, like there's just like I feel like it's there. I feel like I see the reflection. I see the glass, but that's completely drawn. He's got his. I think he needs a bigger bottle opener, but what's that? What's reflecting off him? Yeah, so we got the light coming from the right angle at this moment, depending on where the sun is. Yeah, very much detailed, very much about perspective. So there's a bug with bug spray. Let's keep going here. So we got the sunbather. Yeah, look out. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that looks quite realistic to me. It looks like he's cut out some of the concrete and moved it, but it's all completely drawn in. Yellow stuff to represent the sand, slightly different color gray to move the, to quote, move the concrete blocks. All right, so there's a sailboat. You know, so like the water, is it, like it looks wet to me, but it's not, it's all drawn. The sailboat, how is it made to look like it's coming perpendicular to the ground? It's made to look like it's coming out of the road. Do you know how they do that? How this guy does it? Okay, so we've got vanishing stuff. That sailboat is drawn on the sidewalk. So it's not going up, it is going back the road, like up the road. It's going really far up the road. It goes way far. In order to make it look like it's coming out of the road, that thing goes way off into the distance. It doesn't look like it from this spot, from the right spot. But you'll see a picture coming up where we see something drawn like really, really tall in order to give the 3D illusion. All right, so that's his favorite thing to use, the sidewalk chalk. What do you think about the beers? Are they real? Are they drawn? The one on the left is real. How about the one on the right? The one on the right is drawn in. Okay, and then we can scroll down here. All right, so that one is supposed to be viewed upside down. So there, that's what it looks like upside down. But you can see how long that guy's leg is in order to give it the illusion of actually having depth, right? Coming down through the sidewalk. Okay, there's a computer. Like maybe you can get a sense of like how enormous that drawing is, given like how small the people look. Like he's drawing these things really big in reality to try to give them a little bit of depth when you're looking at it on the sidewalk. All right, so here's a series. So he's digging for gold. He's got his metal detector there ready. And then in the hole. And then found, how did he get in the hole? He's on his knees. And then struck gold. Okay. Why is he so small? Because the drawing is so massive. In order to give this the illusion of coming out of the sidewalk, look how tiny he is. It's because he's way down the road, 50 feet down this sidewalk. If you look at it from the side, you can see it is not at all circular. It is very, very stretched in the direction that we are trying to give this depth, this illusion of depth. Okay. We haven't seen the correct viewpoint for this, but you can see how long that thing is. 20 feet, 30 feet. And what does it look like if you're standing in the right spot? Looks like a woman with her leg pointing up out of the sidewalk. It looks like most of them are taken from right on the sidewalk. Yeah. All right, that's what he thinks about politicians. That's just wrong. All right, that one's kind of cute. That's one of my favorite ones right there. Like I would swear that that sidewalk is see-through. You know, like it just, and then you gotta watch out down below. That's pretty impressive, I think. Okay, so you have the link for that one too. You can check it out. He's got other stuff up here as well. What I'd like you guys to do now is, it says here, it says go back to the beginning of the packet and try the now you have some perspective activity. So it should be the new first page of the packet after you ripped off the graph paper that was the old first page. So go back to the new first page. That's part of your homework for tonight. And I'll walk around.